All right, deep divers, buckle up. We're going exploring The Soul of the Indian today by Charles Alexander Eastman, who also went by Ohiyesa.
Okay.
And it's a really fascinating look, I think, at Native American spirituality. Kind of in that like pre-reservation era. You know, Eastman was a Santee Dakota writer and physician.
Wow.
Talk about hyphenate.
Yeah, bridging two worlds there for sure.
Totally.
Traditional Dakota life and then Dartmouth and Boston University.
I know.
Pretty wild.
It's kind of amazing.
It is fascinating how he uses his personal experience to illuminate these beliefs for a Western audience.
Yeah.
He doesn't just describe rituals or ceremonies.
Yeah.
He explains the why behind them.
Yeah.
The deeper meaning that connects them to the Indians' worldview.
Exactly. And have you ever tried to explain something like really important to someone who just doesn't get it?
Yeah.
Like trying to explain string theory to my cat?
Sure.
It's that kind of bridge Eastman is building. In this book,
I see what you're saying. And, you know, one of the most fundamental concepts he explores is the great mystery.
yeah,
It's not a specific god or deity, but more like this all-encompassing spiritual force that connects everything.
right. It's like you look up at the stars and you're just like, whoa, there's something bigger than me out there. That sense of awe, that's the great mystery.
That's a great way to put it. And for Native Americans, connecting with the great mystery was a deeply personal and solitary experience.
Yeah.
They didn't need fancy churches or elaborate rituals.
Right.
Nature was their cathedral.
It's true. Remember that time we got lost hiking in Yosemite
Oh, yeah.
and we stumbled on that clearing with the waterfall? It was like, boom, instant connection with nature.
I do remember that. That's a good example.
That's what Eastman's talking about.
I think that was also the time you almost stepped on a rattlesnake.
Oh, come on.
Maybe a little less boom and a little more
Okay.
watch where you're going.
Right.
though.
Fine. You know, you were secretly thrilled by the danger, though.
That might be true.
Speaking of thrilling, Eastman talks about this thing called the Bampa Day,
Okay.
like a vision quest where young men go out into the wilderness to connect with the great mystery. Super intense.
It was a rite of passage, a way for them to seek guidance, you know, find their purpose and connect with the spiritual world.
Yeah.
They would fast, pray, and endure the elements hoping for a vision or a sign.
You know, it's like that time I tried to find myself
Uh-huh.
by backpacking through Europe after college.
Right.
Except instead of profound visions,
Mm-hmm.
I mostly just got food poisoning and a really bad sunburn.
I seem to recall a story
Ah.
about a particularly ill-advised hostel in
Oh,
Amsterdam.
Okay. Oh, maybe that wasn't my finest hour. But the point is, seeking spiritual guidance can be tough,
That's true.
whether you're in the wilderness or a questionable European hostel.
Mm-hmm.
But Eastman makes it clear, you know, family was super important in passing down these spiritual values.
Absolutely. The family was a spiritual unit, you know, and the mother played a central role in shaping her child's understanding of the great mystery.
Mothers are amazing.
Right. Like,
Mine still calls me every Sunday to make sure I'm eating enough vegetables.
ah,
But back then, mothers were teaching their kids about the spirits of nature, the importance of respecting all living things. It's beautiful.
and they weren't just telling stories, they were living those beliefs every day.
Totally.
Eastman describes how mothers would hush their babies if they cried too loudly, so as not to disturb the trees or the birds.
Wow.
It's this incredible reverence for nature woven into their everyday lives.
See, even babies had to be mindful. My nephew screams like a banshee no matter where he is.
Yeah.
But anyway, Eastman also talks about grandparents being like the keepers of tradition, passing down wisdom and stories to the younger generation.
Yes.
You know, kind of like how my grandma taught me how to make her famous apple pie.
Except instead of pie recipes, it was ancient wisdom and spiritual teachings.
Right.
The elders held a position of deep respect. They were seen as living embodiments of the tribe's history and values.
Grandparents are the best,
Yeah.
aren't they? Full of stories and life lessons, and sometimes unsolicited advice about your love life.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of which, Eastman also talks about the sanctity of marriage, the importance of the clan, and the emphasis on moral conduct, especially things like chastity and fidelity. It's like their whole lives were intertwined with these spiritual beliefs.
Yes, for the Indian morality and spirituality were inseparable. It wasn't about following a set of rules.
Right.
It was about living in a way that honored the great mystery and strengthened your connection to it.
It's all about living with intention, right?
Yes.
Be mindful of your actions
Yeah.
and how they impact the world around you,
Yeah.
which honestly is something I'm still working on. I mean, have you seen my apartment? Intentional organization is not my strong suit.
We'll tackle that another time. But speaking of intention, Eastman also talks about the importance of ceremonies in Native American spirituality,
Yeah.
although he's careful to point out that many of the ceremonies we might be familiar with had already been influenced by European contact
Sure.
by the time they were documented.
It's like trying to understand a culture. Through a blurry Instagram filter, you're not getting the full picture.
Right.
But he does give us some insights into what those original ceremonies
Yeah.
might have been like.
He describes the sun dance, for example.
Yeah.
Originally, it was a personal vow, an act of thanksgiving where warriors would fulfill pledges, made in moments of danger.
Wow.
It involved physical ordeals, but the focus was on spiritual commitment, not just proving your toughness.
It's interesting how the meaning of things can get distorted over time. Right? Like how Valentine's Day went from a celebration of love to a Hallmark holiday about buying overpriced chocolates.
That's a good point. And speaking of distortions, Eastman also mentions the Medicine Lodge. It was a unique organization,
Okay.
maybe even a reaction to the arrival of missionaries. They had secret rituals,
Ooh, secret rituals.
degrees of membership,
Yeah.
and a strong emphasis on morality and healing.
That's kind of intriguing. It's like their version of a super exclusive club.
Yeah.
I bet they had a killer handshake.
I'm sure the handshake was less important than the knowledge they possessed. They were the keepers of medicinal knowledge.
Right.
But their teachings went beyond just treating the body. They were concerned with the well-being of the whole person, body and spirit.
Holistic healing that's so in right now.
Yeah.
You know, I've been thinking about trying acupuncture. Do you think it actually works?
Perhaps we can delve into alternative medicine another time. For now, let's stick with Eastman.
Right. All right. Back to the deep dive. But hey, maybe we can chat acupuncture later. I'm always up for expanding my wellness horizons.
You know, one of the things Eastman challenges is this whole stereotype of Native Americans being barbaric or uncivilized.
Oh, totally.
It's so easy to fall into those traps, you know? Judging another culture based on our own limited perspective.
It's like that time I went to Japan and accidentally bowed with my hands in the wrong position.
Uh-oh.
Everyone stared at me like I'd grown a second head.
Talk about feeling uncivilized.
Well, I believe the term is cultural faux pas, not uncivilized.
But yes, Eastman argues that the Indians' understanding of morality is actually quite sophisticated.
Right.
They valued things like balance, self-control, and the interconnectedness of all life.
And get this, it all starts with silence.
Really?
Who knew that? Being quiet could be so profound. I mean, I can barely go 5 minutes without checking my phone.
For the Indian, silence wasn't just the absence of noise, it was a sign of inner strength, a state of perfect equilibrium. It represented self-mastery, patience, and reverence.
Wow, that's deep. You know, maybe I should try silent retreat.
You should.
Do you think they have Wi-Fi at those places? Just kidding.
I highly doubt that achieving a state of inner peace involves live tweeting your meditation experience.
Okay, point taken. But seriously, what else was the core of their moral code? Besides the whole being quiet for extended periods of time thing, which, let's be honest, is not exactly my superpower.
Well, physical and spiritual strength were highly valued, but not in a purely individualistic sense. It was about being strong for your family,
So it's like a team effort.
your clan, your tribe.
Kind of like that time we had to carry that giant inflatable kayak back to the rental shop. After we almost capsized,
Oh, no.
we had to work together or face the wrath of the kayak rental guy.
I see.
Those rental guys are serious about their kayaks.
I'm sensing a theme here. But yes, it was about supporting each other, contributing to the well-being of the community.
Right.
And generosity was a big part of that.
It wasn't about amassing a ton of stuff. It was about sharing what you had.
Exactly.
It's like, remember that amazing vintage dress I found at that thrift store?
Oh, yeah.
You loved it so much. I just had to give it to you. See, generosity.
You also generously gave me that hideous ceramic frog that's been gathering dust on my shelf ever since.
That frog has character. But anyway, Eastman also talks about how they had these really unique feasts,
Okay.
like the Feast of Virgins, which reinforced values like chastity and honor, especially for young women.
It's interesting how these feasts served not only as celebrations, but also as public affirmations of their moral code. It was a way for individuals to demonstrate their commitment to these values.
Right.
And for the community to hold each other accountable.
It's kind of like a public declaration of your intentions.
Yes.
Right? Like, I solemnly swear to uphold the values of this tribe and to only eat organic kale chips. Okay. Maybe not the kale chips, but you get the idea.
I'm not sure organic kale chips were high on their list of priorities. But the point is that these values were woven into every aspect of their lives. even their approach to warfare.
Wait, warfare.
Yeah.
But I thought they were all about peace and harmony.
Their view of warfare was very different from our modern conception.
Okay.
They saw it as a test of skill and courage, almost like a ritualized tournament.
So more like a highly competitive sporting event.
With less bloodshed, hopefully.
There were strict rules of conduct. Even in battle, killing non-combatants was frowned upon. And there were rituals of mourning.
Even for enemies slain in battle. It was about honoring the warrior spirit, even in your opponent.
That's a level of respect that's hard to imagine these days. I mean, have you seen the comment section on any news article? It's a war zone out there?
Perhaps we can leave the digital battlefield for another discussion. For now, let's focus on how Eastman highlights the impact of European arrival on Native American warfare.
Go.
The introduction of advanced weaponry and a thirst for land drastically changed the nature of conflict.
It became less about honor and more about survival. It's a tragic consequence of colonization that we often overlook.
Exactly. But moving on to a different aspect, where did they derive all these beliefs and values?
Ooh, good question.
Did they have a sacred text? Like the Bible or the Quran?
I'm always fascinated by those ancient texts. I once tried to read the I Ching using coins, but it just told me to invest in real estate. Not exactly the spiritual guidance I was hoping for.
Well, their holy book wasn't a written text.
Yeah.
In the traditional sense, it was a living oral tradition.
Okay.
Stories, songs, proverbs, and prophecies passed down through generations.
So like a giant game of telephone, but with really important spiritual messages. That sounds tricky. I can barely remember what I had for breakfast, let alone ancient wisdom passed down through centuries.
Their memories were a bit sharper than yours, I assure you. Eastman gives us a glimpse into this tradition by sharing some of the key stories from the Sioux creation myth.
Ooh, I love creation myths.
Couple,
They're
right?
like the original superhero origin stories. Tell me everything. Who are the main players? What are the epic battles?
Well, it starts with the firstborn, a being more than human, who understands the language of all animals.
Okay.
He creates a companion for himself, the little boy man, who becomes the first human. The firstborn acts as his teacher, guiding him through the challenges of life.
It's like a cosmic mentorship program. I wish I had a firstborn to guide me through life's tricky bits, like how to parallel park without hitting the curb, or how to fold a fitted sheet.
I'm sure the firstborn had more pressing matters to attend to than your domestic challenges. But the point is, this story emphasizes the close connection between humans and the animal world.
Right, like we're all part of this big interconnected web of life, or as I like to call it, the cosmic dance party. We're all just grooving together on planet Earth.
I'll try to visualize that the next time I'm stuck in rush hour traffic. But moving on, there's another story that parallels the biblical flood.
Ooh, a flood myth, where the little boy man survives a great deluge by building a canoe, while many animals perish.
Right.
Those are always intense. You know, it's amazing how these universal themes pop up in cultures all over the world. It's like we're all tapping into some shared human experience, regardless of where we come from.
Precisely. And speaking of shared experiences, one of the most intriguing aspects of the Sioux tradition is the idea of reincarnation and twin spirits existing across different tribes,
Wait, twin spirits?
races, or even species.
Like you could have a soulmate running around in another tribe. That's kind of romantic, although it could also get awkward if you both fall for the same person.
I believe the concept of twin spirits goes beyond the realm of romantic entanglements.
Okay.
It speaks to a deeper spiritual connection, a recognition of shared essence, across perceived boundaries.
Okay, but imagine the drama. You finally meet your twin spirit, and they're like, hey, you stole my hairstyle. Okay, maybe not that traumatic, but you get the idea.
I'm not sure hairstyle appropriation was a major concern in pre-colonial America, but the point is that this belief highlights the interconnectedness that runs throughout Native American spirituality.
Right.
It's not just humans and nature, it's the connections between all living things.
Deep, man, deep. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Beliefs, family ceremonies, moral codes, creation myths. It's like a crash course in Native American spirituality.
Indeed. But there's one more realm we need to explore before we wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
The realm of death.
Ooh, spooky.
And the borderland of spirits.
Are we talking ghosts? Haunted forests? Seances with talking boards? I'm ready for a good ghost story. Hit me with your best spooky stuff.
While Eastman doesn't delve into ghost stories per se, he does describe the Indians' unique perspective on death.
Okay.
Unlike many cultures that fear death or obsess over the afterlife, their approach was surprisingly pragmatic. They accepted death as a natural part of life,
Wow.
striving for an honorable end, rather than fearing the unknown.
That's a pretty healthy way to look at it.
Right. It is.
I'm still trying to come to terms with the fact that I can't eat pizza every day without serious consequences. Acceptance is a journey, my friend.
I'm sure the Indian had their own dietary struggles. But the point is, their mourning rituals reflected this acceptance. It wasn't about trying to forget the deceased. It was about honoring their memory and maintaining a connection to their spirit.
So instead of dwelling on the sadness of loss, they focused on celebrating the life that was lived. That's actually really beautiful. I like that.
Exactly. And they believed that the spirit didn't just disappear, it persisted in some form, connected to the living and to the natural world.
So it's like their loved ones
Yeah.
were never truly gone. Their presence lingered on, like the scent of your favorite perfume or the echo of a song you used to sing together.
That's a lovely way to put it. And it wasn't just about comfort. It was about maintaining a sense of continuity,
Right.
of connection between the living and the dead. Death wasn't a complete separation. It was a transition into another form of existence.
You know, it makes you think about our own modern rituals around death.
Yeah.
We're so quick to shut it away, hide the grief, move on. Maybe there's something to be said for acknowledging the ongoing presence of those we've lost, keeping their memories alive in our hearts and minds.
It's a thought-provoking perspective. And speaking of thought-provoking, Eastman also touches on the occult
Okay.
and psychic powers often attributed to Native Americans. He acknowledges that there were certainly charlatans, but he also recounts some pretty compelling stories of documented prophecies
Okay, now we're talking.
and other seemingly supernatural abilities.
Let's hear about these superpowers. Were they reading minds, predicting the future, levitating objects?
Well, he describes instances of premonitions, visions, healing abilities, even the ability to communicate with spirits or locate graves. Long after the outward signs have disappeared, his own grandmother seems to have possessed some of these gifts.
That's incredible. It's like they had a sixth sense, a way of tapping into knowledge or insight beyond ordinary perception. You know, sometimes I get these weird hunches. Like that time, I just knew you were going to spill coffee on your shirt. Psychic.
Right. I believe that was more a matter of observing your chronic clumsiness than any psychic ability.
Hey, I resent that. I happen to be very graceful most of the time. But seriously, these stories about prophecies and premonitions are fascinating.
They are.
It makes you wonder, is there more to reality than we can see or measure with our scientific instruments?
Those are questions worth pondering. And perhaps by exploring these ancient beliefs and traditions, we can open ourselves up to possibilities that we might otherwise dismiss.
It's like maybe we've lost touch with some deeper level of awareness that these cultures were able to access. It's kind of mind-blowing.
It certainly challenges our conventional understanding of the world. And on that note, I believe it's time for a brief intermission. We'll return shortly to wrap up our deep dive into the soul of the Indian.
Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back with more mind-bending insights. And maybe even a few more of my awkward personal anecdotes.
You know you love them.
All right, deep divers, we're back. And you know, after that last segment, I'm feeling all kinds of philosophical. It's like we spend so much time caught up in the day-to-day chaos that we forget to look up at the stars and ponder the big questions, you know?
Indeed, the soul of the Indian offers a powerful reminder of the importance of connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Right.
Whether it's nature, community, or the great mystery that Eastman so eloquently describes.
It's all about finding that sense of belonging, of understanding our place in the grand scheme of things. Kind of like that time I tried to assemble that IKEA bookshelf without instructions. I felt so lost and alone until I finally realized I had the wrong screws. Then everything clicked into place.
I'm sensing a metaphor there. But perhaps we can leave your furniture assembly mishaps for another time.
Okay.
As we wrap up this deep dive, what key takeaways resonated most with you from Eastman's work?
Well, I think what struck me most is how he flips the script on so many of the stereotypes about Native American culture.
Yeah.
He shows us the depth, the wisdom, the sophistication of their beliefs and practices.
Absolutely.
It's not just about feathers and headdresses. It's about a profound understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, a reverence for nature, and a commitment to living in balance and harmony.
Precisely. He dismantles this idea of the noble savage, this romanticized but ultimately condescending view of indigenous cultures. He presents a nuanced portrait of a people who are deeply spiritually, intellectually curious, and morally complex.
And let's be real, their approach to life was way more sustainable than ours.
That's true.
They didn't trash the planet or wage endless wars for resources. They lived in a way that honored the earth and respected the delicate balance of nature.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could learn a thing or two from them.
It's certainly a timely message, given the environmental challenges we face today.
Yeah.
Their emphasis on simplicity, on living in harmony with nature, offers a powerful antidote to our culture of excess and consumption.
Maybe true happiness isn't about having the latest gadgets or the biggest house. Maybe it's about finding joy in the simple things. A beautiful sunset, a good conversation, a perfectly brewed cup of coffee. You know, speaking of coffee, you owe me a latte for all this deep thinking.
I believe we're here to discuss the soul of the Indian, not your caffeine cravings.
Okay.
But as we wrap up, what final message would you want our listeners to take away from this exploration?
That's a good question. I guess I would say, don't be afraid to challenge your own assumptions. Be open to learning from different cultures, different perspectives.
Good advice.
You might be surprised by the wisdom you find. It's like, remember that time we tried that weird fermented tea
Oh, yeah.
from that street vendor? I thought it was going to be awful, but it turned out to be amazing.
I believe you're referring to kombucha, which is hardly an obscure beverage these days.
Okay,
But your point is well taken. Exploring unfamiliar territory can lead to unexpected discoveries and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Exactly. So to our listeners, I say go out there and explore. Read Eastman's book. Learn about different cultures. And don't be afraid to get a little uncomfortable. Who knows? You might just find your own personal connection to the great mystery, even if it's hiding in a cup of kombucha.
And until next time, may your journeys be filled with wonder, insight, and perhaps a touch of healthy skepticism.
Happy exploring, everyone.